To achieve raising the debt ceiling, which must happen, America must not ever default, and doing it with Democrats only. During the previous reconciliation, they got a ruling from the parliamentarian that it's possible to amend the budget resolution. It's called a 304 process. They've had plenty of time to execute the debt ceiling increase and have chosen not to do it. Now they have plenty more time because clearly the pause button has been pushed on the larger reckless tax and spending bill. I implore them one more time not to play Russian roulette with the American economy. We've been down this path before when you did not have divided government and the party in the majority got the job done. They need to do this. They have the time to do it. And the sooner they get about it, the better, to make sure the markets and the American people know that, as usual, the American government will never, ever default.
California Governor Gavin Newsom slammed offshore drilling in a news conference on Tuesday after a major oil spill on the state's coast. Roughly 3,000 barrels of crude oil spilled into the Pacific Ocean, killing wildlife and soiling the coastline. Officials say it appears to have leaked from a pipe about 105 feet from where it should have been. That sparked speculation that a ship's anchor may have caused an environmental disaster. Newsom says it all illustrates the need to end oil drilling in California.
It's time, once and for all, to disabuse ourselves that this has to be part of our future. This is part of our past, and we can moralize and talk about the good old days. We can talk about how important these rigs have been to the prosperity of this country and the middle class, but at the end of the day, this is about the stale air of normalcy versus the fresh air of progress.
The revelation that the pipe was likely to blame came as the US Coast Guard and drilling company Amplify Energy came under further scrutiny about the time it took to respond to the spill. There are reports that mariners first reported seeing oil in the water on Friday night, while official notification did not come until Saturday around midday. Newsom also said the spill showed the risks of relying on fossil fuels in California, a state already suffering from drought and wildfires, which experts link to human-caused climate change.
Gentlelady yields back, and I now recognize Representative Brian Mast of Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, ambassadors. Thank you, General. Thank you, Chairman, for yielding me the time. Some of you have answered some questions. Some of you have answered other questions. I want to ask a few new ones and repeat a few the old questions and kind of get a survey because not everybody's answered the same question. A little bit of survey in the affirmative or the negative about how you feel about some of the different occurrences.
We lost you, Mr. Mast. Mr. Mast, we lost you.
Oh.
Now you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Now we hear you.
All right. Perfect. I'm glad I'm back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to go down the line in alphabetical order with Ambassador Armitage, then Crocker, then Lute, and then General McMaster so we don't step on each other. We'll do it in alphabetical order. Going back before...
I think we've lost you again. Mr. Mast. I think we lost you again, Mr. Mast.
I wish I knew why. It says I got full internet here.
I don't know. Let's try it again. Go ahead.
Let's try again.
Give me the question.
Oh, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. We didn't lose too much. I wanted to ask, President Biden said on inauguration, I'm going to make mistakes, When I make them, I will acknowledge them, and I will tell you. Do you all believe that he's acknowledged his mistakes with Afghanistan? Ambassador Armitage?
No, Mr. Mast, I don't. I think he's acknowledged his rather valiant decision to get out, which took some courage, but it was the total evacuation was totally foobar, and I don't think many people have owned up to that yet.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Crocker?
I agree completely.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador Lute?
The president has said a couple times the buck stops here, but it's not clear what happens to the buck after it stops with the president. So I haven't seen sort of corrective action
Yes, sir.
that would indicate good moves.
Yes, sir. General?
No, I don't think so. I have never, I don't think ever seen such a disconnect between what our leaders tell us about what was happening in a place in Afghanistan during this crisis and what was actually happening on the ground. And I think that hypocrisy has reached kind of unprecedented levels. In the same speech announcing our adherence to the timeline that we gave to the Taliban as part of our capitulation agreement, saying that human rights were an important part of our policy, for example, and the list goes on. So I think it's tremendously disappointing.
Thank you, General. Want to move to a different date, April 9th. Office of Director of National Intelligence released its annual threat assessment where they said the Taliban is likely to make gains on the battlefield and the Afghan government will struggle to hold the Taliban at bay if the coalition withdraws support. Do you all believe that President Biden received that report?
It would be hard for me to believe, Congressman, that he hadn't received it because we had been saying things of that nature as a bureaucracy since 2005, 2006, and it only got worse.
Ambassador Crocker?
I know little of how Washington works. I wish I knew even less. Hard for me to believe he would not be aware of that.
Thank you, sir.
It'd be my assumption he knew as well.
Thanks, sir. General?
I don't know. I just don't know what the process is that's being used to give the president best analysis and to give the president multiple options with an assessment of the advantages and disadvantages of those options. I don't know.
Thank you, General. Want to move to another date. April 14th, President Biden announced that we would withdraw from Afghanistan by September 11th, the anniversary. Do you believe that choosing that day was about optics? Ambassador Armitage.
Congressman, I believe that picking September 11th was waving a red flag in front of a bull.
Ambassador Crocker.
I felt like I had received a physical blow when he named that date, that 20 years after the horrors of 9/11 that we all witnessed, that he would choose that date over all others for the final U.S. evacuation. I think he realized it too eventually and changed the calendar.
Yeah, I have no basis to judge why that date was picked. It certainly didn't make sense.
General?
I think it was an affront to all those who served, and I think that making that announcement as he did in Area 60 of Arlington Cemetery really reveals kind of an astonishing misunderstanding of what it means to serve in our military, and the fact that soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines don't want to be pitied. What they want is they want leaders who are dedicated to achieving an outcome that's worthy of the sacrifices that they make in war. I think it's worth pointing out that September 11th is exactly the anniversary the Taliban wanted. For anybody who missed it, the Taliban ran on all television stations in Kabul a show called Victoria Force 3, where it blamed the United States for 9/11, for bringing the attacks on themselves, and again denied the fact that Al-Qaeda had any role.
I thank you all for your answers. Mr. Chairman, I believe my time has expired.
Charge, Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Monaco, I want to come back to this extraordinary letter and memorandum that the Attorney General of the United States issued yesterday. Practically every day brings new reports about this administration weaponizing the federal bureaucracy to go after political opponents. Frankly, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in American history. I mean, for those of us who missed the McCarthy era, I guess this president is intent on bringing it to us, but with new force and new power and new urgency, unlike anything we've ever seen. Are you aware of any time in American history when an attorney general has directed the FBI to begin to intervene in school board meetings, local school board meetings?
I'm not aware, and I'm not aware that is not going on. Let me be very,
Really,
very
this
clear.
isn't about local school board meetings? That's not the subject of the memorandum? I thought that was in the memorandum.
The memorandum is quite clear. It's one page, and it asks the U.S. attorney community and the FBI special agents in charge to convene state and local law enforcement partners to ensure that there's an open line of communication to address threats, to address violence, and that's the appropriate role of the Department of Justice to make sure that we are addressing criminal conduct and violence.
At local school board meetings, let me just ask you this. Is parents waiting sometimes for hours to speak at a local school board meeting to express concerns about critical race theory or the masking of their students, particularly young children? Is that in and of itself, is that harassment and intimidation? Is waiting to express one's view at a school board meeting harassment and intimidation?
As the Attorney General's memorandum made quite clear, spirited debate is welcome, is a hallmark of this country. It's something we all should engage in. And
no, I don't think so, Ms. Monaco. With all due respect, it didn't make it quite clear. It doesn't define those terms, nor does it define harassment or intimidation. It talks about violence. I think we can agree that violence shouldn't be condoned or looked aside from in any way, swept under the rug at all. But harassment and intimidation, what did those terms mean in the context of a local school board meeting? I mean, this seems to, in the First Amendment context, we talk about the chill to speech. If this isn't a deliberate attempt to chill parents from showing up at school board meetings for their elected school boards, I don't know what is. I mean, I'm not aware of anything like this in American history. We're talking about the FBI. You're using the FBI to intervene in school board meetings. That's extraordinary.
Senator, I have to respectfully disagree. That is not what...
Point me to an instance.
The Attorney General's memorandum made quite clear that violence is not appropriate. Spirited public debate on a whole range of issues is absolutely what this country is all about.
Then why is it being investigated by the FBI?
It is not. When and if any situation turns to violence, then that is the appropriate role of law enforcement to address it.
The memorandum covers more than violence. It talks about intimidation. It talks about harassment. So I'm asking you to draw some lines. We do this all the time in the First Amendment context. This is the sum and substance of First Amendment law, so I expect that you'll be available and willing to do it now. Tell me where the line is with parents expressing their concerns, waiting for hours in these school board meetings. We've all seen the videos. This happened in my state. Parents have waited for hours. Sometimes the school board meetings have been ended before they can speak because the school board doesn't want to hear it. And now parents are told that if they wait and they express their views, that they may be investigated for intimidation?
I don't know who's telling them that, Senator. The job of the Justice Department is to investigate crimes. When a situation turns to violence, when and if a situation turns to violence, it's the job of the Justice Department and local law enforcement to address that. The Attorney General's memorandum simply asked the U.S. attorney community, the FBI, and their counterparts to ensure that state and local law enforcement has an open line of communication to report threats, whether they happen in the context of election officials being threatened, whether they happen in the context of members of Congress being threatened, which the FBI responds to on a regular basis, as is appropriate. The job of the Justice Department is to address criminal conduct.
You know, all I can say is this is truly extraordinary. I think you know it is. It's unprecedented. You can't point to a single instance where anything like this has happened before. And I think parents across this country are going to be stunned to learn, stunned, that if they show up at a local school board meeting, by the way, where they have the right to appear and be heard, where they have the right to say something about their children's education, where they have the right to vote, and you are attempting to intimidate them. You are attempting to silence them. You are attempting to interfere with their rights as parents and, yes, with their rights as voters. This is wrong. This is dangerous. And I cannot believe that an Attorney General of the United States is engaging in this kind of conduct. And frankly, I can't believe that you are sitting here today defending it. I intend to get answers to these questions. You won't answer my questions. I'm going to get answers to these questions. Mr. Chairman, we need to have a hearing on this subject. We need to hear from the Attorney General himself. He needs to come here, take the oath, sit there, and answer questions. We have never seen anything like this before in our country's history. And frankly, I want to say I think it is a dangerous, dangerous precedent.
This hearing on Violence Against Women Act will continue. Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin.